Both of my guests now have served in Afghanistan and Iraq and have great familiarity with these types of exchanges. Pete Hegseth is a war veteran, Fox News contributor, and CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. And Buck Sexton is a former CIA officer and now national security editor at theblaze.com. Guys, thanks for being here. So, Pete,
thanks for having me.
You served as a guard at Gitmo. You were an infantry platoon leader in combat in Iraq. You conducted multiple raids via Black Hawk helicopter. In Afghanistan, you trained people on how to understand how to interact with the local Afghans. When you watch this tape, what jumps out to you?
Well, it's a very telling exchange. Every American is told, special operators especially, be polite, be professional, and have a plan to kill anybody that you meet. And you see that in the special operators here. This is a serious, precise operation. They're not used to dealing in daylight. They prefer to, we own the night with with thermal dynamic devices and night vision goggles. We prefer to operate that way. This is a broad daylight, open field, not the type of thing you see. So you see these special operators getting Sergeant Bergdahl, maintaining their right hand available if they have to take decisive action, even though they're not carrying weapons. They're searching him quickly. He was carrying a plastic bag. They're pulling that out and putting it on the ground in case there was anything suspicious there, and quickly getting in and getting out. There's no trust. There's no love lost between these groups. The Taliban are standing back because they're not looking for an interaction with Americans that have overwhelming firepower. At the end of the day, the Taliban are releasing this video because they think it has propaganda value for them, showing that we are coming to them. They have power. They have control. That's what they're trying to do with this video.
I know, Buck, your headline on this was almost the same as Pete's. You said this is a big win for the Taliban when it comes to propaganda. How so?
Well, what they're doing here is establishing, first off, they do some close-ups of various Taliban fighters in the round of this. They show Taliban fighters with AK-47s, with RPGs. They're trying to show we're bad, we're tough, and we're giving the Americans back their guy. I think there's also some broader symbolism that they're going to be pointing out here in the weeks ahead. This is already, Megan, making the rounds on jihadist forums around the world. Of course, the Taliban themselves have put this up. So there's a tremendous amount of propaganda value inherent in the whole tape. But once they put a sound bed beneath it of how the Mujahideen are the best and America's withdrawing, that's where they get that propaganda value. In terms of the tape itself, by the way, what you see here from a human intelligence perspective, from a case officer perspective, would be it's likely that the individual who's speaking to Bergdahl in that vehicle is probably his handler, the one who knows him best. There's a familiarity there. That would be the person that you would expect to sort of hand him off to the Americans. On the other side of things, when you see those Americans come out and actually deal with the exchange, it seems like one of them may be an interpreter. Of course, they're special operations soldiers. They're in civilian clothing, and I assume that they have sidearms at the ready, but notably they don't have long guns. They don't have M4s. They're trying to make this as peaceable a handover, at least in terms of the visuals of it, as they can. But quite honestly, Megan, if the Taliban didn't want this to go through, if they wanted to engage in an ambush, that helicopter quickly becomes a bullet magnet. Very difficult for our guys to fight their way out. The best protection, in a sense, they had is the Taliban got such a good deal and wanted this to go through so that a double cross was unlikely.
Pete, what do you make of the demeanor of Bowe Bergdahl in this tape?
Subdued, prepared, resigned to his fate. I think at this point it is sunk in what's going to happen. He's probably been told to some extent where he's going. Whether he believes his captors or not is a whole other question, but he's resigned to his fate. And I think we've all heard the story of him writing our SF ? In the helicopter, are you Americans or not? He's still not quite sure to the very end. I don't know that he knew 5 years ago when, and I believe, he walked off the base.
Does it look like, I mean, you look, when I see this, it looks like maybe he was in the darkness prior to this, because it looks like he's really having trouble adjusting his eyes. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the blink rate, Buck. I mean, when you see it as a former CIA guy, how would you analyze his physical behavior and his appearance? Clean shaven, which is interesting.
It's very interesting he's clean-shaven, especially because in previous videos he had appeared bearded, and it seemed that that was part of, by the way, the propaganda efforts that they were making. They're saying that this guy, there were at least sources inside the Taliban who were apparently telling media outlets that, oh, he's kind of on our side. He's joining us. And so they put out these tapes of him with a beard on. He's clean-shaven. He's wearing a traditional shalwar kameez, a local dress. He also has what's known as a shamag, which is that scarf around his shoulders. But he seems to lack a sort of situational awareness. It seems likely that he may have been pulled out of a safe house very recently before he was handed over, perhaps in the darkness. Not clear on whether he would be kept that way day to day over his captivity over the 5 years, but certainly he's disoriented. But he was able to walk on his own with minimal help, at least in the helicopter, which draws questions about whether the administration's narrative of an imminent health threat was actually real. That was actually why they decided to make the trade when they did. I think there are a lot of people that question that.
They came out and said that they felt this was an urgent and an acute situation, that he was literally knocking at death's door, according to some of the Democrats. Pete, I want to ask you, you know, normally in this region of the world, facial hair, it's like a symbol of manliness, is my understanding. For them to shave him all over, are they trying to send a message to us?
Well, there likely is an emasculation there. I mean, they're handing over someone they want to be seen as a feeble, almost a gift to the Americans, as a sacrificial lamb that we've given to you in exchange for 5 of our very best. Look at this feeble prize that you get at the end of this long journey where we are the victors, which is what you heard from the propaganda video that was released from Qatar when you get these 5 Taliban killers back. And what you see in the visual is a weak, feeble American stumbling toward the helicopter who's oriented and really at the beck and call of his captors who've been holding him for so long. They want that image, and they project it in this video.
And you say the same thing, Buck. I know that there's a symbolism here. I mean, they're savvy. The enemy, they're somewhat savvy in terms of production value and the message they're trying to send of, you know, us on the ground quickly getting out, them standing there with their RPGs.
The famous phrase the Taliban is often repeated as having said is that we have all the clocks, the Americans, but they have all the time. President Obama has declared that we're going to be pulling out. That's, of course, without looking at what the conditions on the ground will be. He can't tell based into the future. And so this video of the U.S. getting back its guy, as Pete rightly points out, and sort of the circumstances surrounding that is also part of a broader narrative of, yes, this helicopter is leaving off into the ridgeline, if you will. This is the first of many from the Taliban perspective. All the helicopters will be leaving soon. Look at the Americans. They had to deal with us. They had to give us 5 guys for their 1. Again, tremendous propaganda value for the Taliban, and unfortunately playing into a narrative that this administration isn't in this thing to win this thing. They're just doing it for the politics, and I think that as we've seen in the past week, they don't even handle the politics of it very well.
You know, Pete, before it came out, before all the news reports hit this week that he may be a deserter, you know, and so on, we did a poll here at Fox News, and it was split almost down the middle. 47% said they were against his release. I think 45% said they were in favor. I might have that reversed. Anyway, it was almost 50-50 on whether they thought that this was a good sort of deal to get him out. Although, yeah, here it is. Okay. U.S. releasing 5 Taliban prisoners in exchange for the return of a U.S. soldier. 45% approve, 47% disapprove. That was before we heard so much about him. But when you see him, when you see a fellow soldier, fellow American, in this condition, does it soften you? I mean, how do you feel about it?
There is an understandable and human desire and want to get a back. End of the day, that is very much true. However, the more you learn, as much as you want to have empathy for him and his family, and you do, and you see this soldier who didn't know what he was getting into fundamentally when he did what he did, deserted or a traitor, whatever it is, but you have to then step back and say, if you didn't believe in the mission, you wouldn't stand by your comrades, and you walked off that base, then this day we will temporarily be grateful that you're home, and then we will hold you to account for what you brought on the fellow members of your unit and on their mission, and now today in this propaganda video with what you've handed the Taliban in what Buck rightly points out is a symbolic ending of that helicopter taking off is a powerful piece of imagery that I want to emphasize as well, that symbolizes what they believe we are going to do and what Haqqani and the Taliban will seize on, which is the Americans are gone, look right through them, because we are the future of Afghanistan, not this puppet centralized government in Kabul. It is us. We are the strong ones. The Americans are on the way out.
Wow. Thank you guys both for being here with your really interesting insights on it.